Hello, everybody. This is an episode of Trust Talk where we will examine the intersection of artificial intelligence, digital security, and digital identity. As the development of AI continues to accelerate, so too does its potential for misuse. So, from identity theft to nefarious creation of contents, uh, all these are already happening and will only increase. So, we joined today by uh, Professor Damian Borth to discuss the vital role of identity and vLEI, in particular in curbing AI-driven fraud, verifying the source and authenticity of AI-generated content, and confirming the identities of organizations and their human or AI-generated representatives. So, uh, Damien, would you like to introduce yourself and share with us your experience in this domain?
Yeah, thanks for having me here. My name is Damian Borth. I'm professor at the University of St. Gallen. I have the chair in artificial intelligence and machine learning. Coming back from the German Research Center for Artificial Intelligence, Kaiserslautern, moved 2018 to St. Gallen and building up the new School of Computer Science here, and working on multiple topics of neural networks, in particular trying to give neural networks identities.
Quite exciting as a topic for sure. You're definitely the expert we want to talk to today because when we started this Trot Talk idea, we thought, okay, what could be an interesting topic to start with? And obviously, as AI is in the mind and the brain of everybody, is in the press all the time, with a lot of fears and a lot of also excitements, depending on where you stand with regards to AI. We thought it would be very interesting to have a conversation with someone who knows what he's talking about, and you're perfect for that. So I'd like to start with a question on how do you think AI is reshaping the landscape of digital security, and what are the primary challenges we face in maintaining digital trust in general?
It's a really interesting question. I think a question that is right on the spot. If you think about what happened over the last 3 years in artificial intelligence in particular, this was starting with late November 2022 with ChatGPT and the upcoming momentum that we experience around generative AI. So, what we currently have with all these new exciting applications of language models, they generate content, they generate text, they're able to generate other models, generate images. So this generative AI is a very exciting situation currently that we experience. And now we are at the edge of putting those language models into agents. And these agents will interact with us and our environment. We already see this with applications from OpenAI, for example, Cursor, OpenAI Operator, and Anthropic Cursor, where those language models inside of agents are able to interact with the computer. Maybe they're able to interact in an web environment. They will probably get credit cards, and then will on behalf of the people interact with other entities, maybe even close transactions like booking flights or having some other things that they organize for the users using them. And then it's going to be very interesting. How do we identify those agents? How are agents in general identifiable? And how are we tracing this or making those transactions accountable with respect to building up and understanding who did what on the internet? Because my guess will be that there will be much more bots in the future on the internet than humans.
That's for sure, and personal bots as well, and personal AI agents as well, which is something that I've been looking at recently with a project like Morpheus. I'm not sure you're familiar with them. It is fascinating indeed, and the question, the natural next question when you start describing what you just described is how do we secure that world? How do we enable trust? Because you're never sure whether the AI agent you will be interacting with is effectively um, a good one or a bad one, and how can digital identity verification systems, for example, the framework that we have at GLEIF with the vLEI, as an example, can help in ensuring that we are talking to the right AI agent, and that the information we're receiving can be trusted.
Mhm. I mean, that's a difficult question, particularly if you think about neural networks. in general. So all these, language models are built on deep neural networks, so-called transformer architectures, and they are trained. And the neural networks are different versions and varieties of derived neural networks from base models that exist. Um, so I think the first observation that I have is that there will be many, many different language models that will interact with agents. They will be specialized and they will be personalized. So we will have kind of a big bang of agents interacting with us. That's the one thing. The other observation, which is also very interesting, is if you look at the UAI Act, there's also this idea of registering neural networks or AI systems into a database. So, simply speaking, I'm thinking about this as, you have a car and you need a license plate. So a license plate is identifying the car, which is very important when the car has an accident or harms somebody. And we can refer, looking at the license plates, who owns the car, and therefore have, traceability and accountability if, any liabilities have to be settled. The license plate of a car, however, is only as good or as helpful as it is connected to the car. So usually this is done by some documents that connect the license plate, the number with the chassis number, so that people can put the license plate for one car and switch it to another. So when we look now at agents and neural networks, we will have IDs for neural networks, but how do we connect those IDs that are, some kind of a given identification system to the true nature of the neural network? And this is an open question, how we can actually connect directly to the neural network so that we know when the neural network changes its behavior or is continued with training, we will be able to figure out, is it the same neural network, so it can keep the license plate, the number, or is it a new neural network, so it needs a new identity to kind of trace the evolution of these neural networks. And this is a very difficult question to be answered. And I think once we will have those tools in place, we would need a system like the vLEI and the overall umbrella of LEI to connect those neural network identities or IDs to the overall corporate so that we will have liability chains. And I think this is a very nice symbiotic relationship of having the vLEI and having the identification system for neural networks in place.
Yeah. So, and in addition, it's leveraging something that is already known from the regulators and from the public sector, the legal entity identifier,
Yeah,
instead of recreating the wheel. It's leveraging, yep,
very true. Yeah.
absolutely, what we currently have. So that's fascinating. And so we always, to go back to the potential of AI as well as the threats of AI in a way. How can we redirect AI to
Right.
actually enable AI to solve the threats of AI? I don't know if you see what I mean, but there we I was recently in a conference at BIS where there was a debate about how AI could control AI and ensuring that they are somewhat behaving as they should, or at least that they are in control. But at the same time, so how do you control the AI, controlling the AI, and so on and so forth? So, what's your perspective of AI helping or not helping actually in supporting the overall ecosystem?
Yeah, it's always a difficult question, like if the systems to be checked is the same system to check, right? I mean, there's checks and balances. So if we look at, again, deep neural networks, the DNA of neural networks are the weights that are trained over, many, many iterations. So the all the weights of a neural networks, and these are billions if you look at the language model state of the art, they dictate the behavior of the neural network with the prompt. So we would need to somehow understand how is the neural network behaving by just looking at the weights. This would be like a really, really amazing, tool that we would have. And once we understand the weights, and there are billions, if we could make a compressed version of those weights, we would be able actually to think about an identity or a fingerprint of a neural network. Regulation or law enforcement only works as good as we can identify who we should, or what's the artifact to be regulated, what's the artifact to be law enforced. So we need identity on the one side, and on the other side, a mechanism how we could kind of predict the behavior of a neural network from its weights. And we actually are working on something we call weight-based learning, where we try to learn from all available neural networks on, for example, public repositories like GitHub or Hugging Face, to understand what's the nature of the neural networks, and then to understand how we can learn or train an AI to give them identifiers and train an AI to predict the behavior. Surprisingly, it's working very well in predicting the behavior of smaller models. Now we have to scale this up to large language models and be able to actually trace back, derive models from main models. So I think we should look at the AI to check the other AI as a tool, while the AI as a language model and agent would be this interactive autonomous system that maybe even has transactions that are executed for me on the internet. But the other AI is more like a toolbox. So with regard to that, this toolbox should be always be used by a human, by somebody that is monitoring the AI. And this toolbox is to be developed, or it must be developed in the next couple of years. There are first laboratory experiments that are running very well, but needs to be put into
I was
production.
going to ask, is there any real life example of those tooling already active and preventing fraud, preventing big, bringing transparency to the system, or is it only experimental at this stage?
Yeah. There are many startups. So there's a lot of research in this area. There are many startups that are working on that. So some of those tools are more in an experimental laboratory setup. Some are already used in the field with real AIs. The very crowded space in the certification space of neural networks. One interesting startup, for example, is Lattice Flow from Zurich. I very much appreciate. It's really interesting. They're working a lot on trying to find boundaries how AIs behave. So that's moving forward. There are other startups in these areas too. There's a lot of research that is currently happening in this area. For us, for example, we started 2021, and now we kind of figured out that there's a larger community. So we're organizing the first workshops where the community, the weight-based learning community, is meeting itself. People from MIT, from Munich, from Stanford, from Oxford, from Haifa, Technion. We're all gathering together to actually push in this direction, so that maybe we'll be able to take this foundational knowledge or fundamental knowledge and have a transfer project to put it into some products. And product development is sometimes more tricky than the research, but without the research, no product development. So again, a chicken egg problem that we have
And you
here.
see a lot of collaboration cross-border around that topic. You just mentioned
Oh
universities
yes.
talking to one
Oh,
another. Yeah.
exactly. It's really amazing since the last 12 months. This collaboration really took off. So we have great colleagues in, Israel, Technion. They're really amazing working in this direction. We have great people from Mila that are also collaborating on some of the papers here in Canada. There are people from, also Germany we figured recently out. So it's really exciting to bring those people together because they're all moving in the same direction, but a little bit different understanding of that. So this community building effort, first of all, has to understand that, kind of create a common terminology and common ground. And then we can kind of align our efforts to push this topic forward. And people are willing to collaborate because they understand that it's an important direction. And there are obviously more research outside of the weight-based learning domain that we are part of.
And do you see that collaboration also happening at the private level? So startups, are they generally unique commercial opportunities being targeted and with no collaboration with competitors? Or is it like a bit like in the blockchain industry at the beginning, everybody working together to grow the pie before fighting for the pie, the pieces of the pie? How is it working on the AI side?
That's a good question. So in the weight-based learning domain, not many startups yet there, but there are ideas to move into transfer. We have, however, in the regulatory AI regulation landscape, a lot of startups. They usually kind of also like collaborate together, like this, I would always say like the technical know-how startup is collaborating with an established player, maybe a reinsurance company that has the reputation and works with this startup to connect actually to build, those tools inside of processes. Because if you think about in particular certification of neural networks is not only tooling or toolboxing, but it's also like a process and aligning the process according to all those regulatory demands. So a lot of expertise that where people have to find each other and then also to kind of connect with each other and figure out if there's a mutual benefit of pushing that direction that, is also commercially beneficial, not only technically beneficial. This is happening. And obviously, people that group together, they cluster, and then there are other clusters, and they then are in a competitive setup, which is also good for the overall industry and domain in that space. Because we will need these types of tools in the very future. And if you look at the overall AI landscape, we have very strong frontier models in the US, very strong frontier models since DeepSeek in China. So Europe, well, we have Mistral as a frontier model, some other models here and there. Um, so the feeling's a little bit that those big players in the US and in China, they're really like pushing forward. And we in Europe, we're looking a little bit from the outside and being a little bit disappointed about, why there's not much happening. Although a lot of things are happening in Europe. I think what we could do is we could in Europe and in particular in Switzerland become the gatekeepers for AI systems. So I would be personally happy if the models are coming from US or China or everywhere else, as long as there is a process and a certification and some verification of models that might come from startups or organizations, NGOs from Europe, or in particular Switzerland with its neutrality. I mean, it's the best place to found a company like this in Switzerland, I think.
Absolutely, like the Global LEI Foundation being based in Switzerland as well. Neutral.
Very much agree. Yeah.
Component of it. Yeah, thank you. So we've looked uh, at what's happening out there, and I think every company and every organization is looking at what's happening and wondering what do I have to do? What can I do now? It's still everything is still moving pieces, right? And it's unclear where it's going, although there is a clear direction of travel. But how what can organizations do today to organize themselves in a way and prepare themselves for what's coming?
Yeah, it's very exciting, right? I mean, it's on the one side really exciting because so much is happening. There's a high velocity in this entire environment. New startups are being founded with hundreds of millions, which is really crazy. On the other side, it's also overwhelming. This velocity and this excitement can be also very pressuring established players and established companies that suddenly they believe they also have to train a language model. They have to do something in that space, which is kind of interesting because it is the competitive edge of the future. I strongly believe the companies that will be able to handle AI systems, to train maybe their own AI systems in some particular situations, they will have the competitive edge over the next 10 years. And I would think we need to differentiate if kind of every company has its core competence. And this is for automotive companies, the self-driving car. So this kind of AI technology, this machine learning technology should be their own intellectual property, right? But a car company probably doesn't need to develop their own speech recognition system to control the radio. This is something they can buy, right? So it's kind of important to understand what's the core competency and the or core competence, and then what should I own as an IP and what should I kind of get in. So companies need to understand this, and once they understand, they can strategically develop that. So I would definitely try to get talent inside of the companies because that's something that is growing very slowly. We're giving our best at universities to educate more people, but this is a very precious resource. And on the other side, also give people that are working on AI the right tools, which is currently GPUs and high performance compute. Because talent, if they don't receive the right tools, they will go to places where they will receive the tools. So it's kind of a situation where we need to enable companies to develop, for example, take a simple example, also pharmaceutical industry, Basel. I mean, there are companies, they should develop language models on pharma development. Um, they need the talent, they need the compute. Not every company needs that. Some are buying all those different types of language model access from Anthropic or OpenAI. So either you're a company that in your core competence, you are developing your own language tool, or if you're buying the technology, you should be able to really carefully evaluate all those Gen AI, applications, all those Gen AI providers, because once you're able to evaluate that on your data, and you're the expert as a company on your data, it's not OpenAI, they have to serve all the market. But on your data, you're the expert. Once you're able to understand your data and how those companies are able to help you with your data, you could actually use this to understand how all the different language models, how well or not well they're doing with your data, and then negotiate much better deals with those companies. You could kind of change the entire dynamic of this process and kind of empower you to be in charge, because at the end, it's your data, right? But this process has to start, and evaluation of Gen AI is a little bit tricky because, all the text, all the images are generated. They have to be kind of reviewed by people, and this is not very scalable. So it's a little bit tricky. There are tricks how to do it, but this is something I would tell companies what to do. Figure out what you have to own, figure out what you can buy. If you have to own something, invest in people and compute. If you want to buy, go for evaluation and do it really, really good or really, really well.
And in terms
Yeah.
of, because we discussed the benefits here of AI, but what about the threats of AI? So how do you protect yourself as an organizations around, for example, impersonation of your company, which happens a lot, deepfakes, those type of challenges AIs
Oh,
are
yeah.
also bringing into the corporate world of more fraud, AI generated fraud, if you wish. So how can you
Yeah.
protect your
Yeah.
identity as companies and the identity of the people working for your company actually?
Yeah. This is a kind of a, I mean, we see already cases like this where a deep fake is impersonating, for example, C-level executive at a company, CFO, somebody else that is then calling and asking an employee to transfer this amount of money to this account, and then this money is gone because the voice is really sounding like the person, because the person is interacting with its employee exactly like that. So these cases are happening. This is not science fiction. This is happening already. What we need to know now that because of having these cases and having the agents starting to interact, we need to establish systems that are able to handle that maybe automatically in the background, such that when I'm getting a call and I'm interacting with an email, a system is telling me this is verified, this is exactly that person, and it's exactly that person in their role that is verified by the company, which is something that might also change over time, and which is something that requires an underlying system that is able to be dynamically adjusted. And I think you guys have a very good infrastructure for that, and a very interesting toolbox for this particular need, which I personally believe will be more than ever needed in the next couple of years.
Absolutely, you're referring to the verifiable LEI and the credentials it's associated with the vLEI. The systems needs obviously to be global. It can't be national solutions only. Otherwise, our global economy will be challenged in a way. But in any case, I wanted to. Did you have anything else you want to ask? You add as a message, maybe, or as a conclusion to our conversation before we close?
Yeah, I think it's the velocity of the development is incredible. It's super exciting. It's I'm working in this environment in this field for many many years. I'm super excited. There are also negative things that are happening that have an impact. We have to deal with that. And since we're dealing here with computers, all the tools should be also somehow machine driven to be able to automate, because we will not be able to catch up as humans with that. And best technology is the one that's not visible. So I think this is something where, again, in Switzerland or in Europe, we can become really thought leaders in this environment and be the gatekeepers of trustworthy interaction with machines. So I would say for us all in Europe, it's very important to not be kind of disappointed about the development that happens, to feel being left outside, but to kind of understand that we have some core competencies and we should focus on them and build the right tools to become an mediator in this world that is around the corner.
That sounds very good. I love that last message from you. So thank you so much for your time, Damien, and looking forward for other conversations on this topic and other topics in the future. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. It was a great discussion.